Okay, so this is mentoring call, and we're going to tackle some of the things that has been coming up. One, I want to talk a little bit about leasebacks. Let me start with that. You guys may be hearing a lot about leasebacks right now. And in fact, I'm looking at on one of my deals doing a leaseback pretty soon. What a leaseback is the idea that a seller is selling a home, but they need more time in the home. Now, you can do, if you look on the contract, there's a part of the contract that will say in there, the like close of escrow is going to be blah, blah, blah. Buyer takes possession at blah, blah, blah. And the default is usually close of escrow. But you may have buyer takes possession 2 days after. You may have it 7 days after. But what if it's longer? Then these are some of the things to look at. So that's when you look at what's called a lease back. And you're literally leasing back, the buyer is the property to the seller. And there's a number of reasons for that. I'm even in one of those reasons where my seller is selling their property and they're taking all of those funds that are going to be in that account and they're buying another home outright. And we've even targeted the other home and so on, but obviously there's no cash in the bank right now. So we're going to do probably a lease back on the property to do that. Now, if it was just going to be 7 days, we already have built into the contract, she has at least 7 days afterwards for that. But there's some things about that kind of come up that become gray. So you kind of clarify some of those things. One is technically, if it's a cash offer, you don't have to worry about it. But lenders don't always like leasebacks, and they really don't like leasebacks above 60 days. So you usually cap it at that amount. And I've even seen a lot of times leasebacks like 29 days or 59 days or something right below a certain amount. So then that way it's just no problem. A leaseback that's 30 days or more then becomes a tenant landlord sort of contract. And that's a separate contract then that you're going to have everybody fill out on top of that. So that's why you'll see a lot of times leasebacks are less than 30 days. You'll see 29 days, you'll see 2 weeks, you'll see something like that, because then it's very easy just to put in the current contract or even make an addendum and then boom, you're done. But anything above that has to be, then it becomes that landlord and renter situation. The other thing is technically now the buyer owns the home. So what about the insurance? Well, really the seller, once they live in the home and it's no longer their home, they need to get renter's insurance. Now it's cheap, it can be super cheap, but they still technically need to get renter's insurance, because what if something were to happen? Well, now they're a renter, so they have to do that. Those are some of the technical things about a leaseback. But the reasons why, like I mentioned, can be a number of reasons, is people need more time to move out of the house. You could have something that's even called, I mentioned this in the last call, a 1031 exchange, where the target property is actually an investment property. So if that's the case, you only have 45 days to get your 1031 exchange done. So it may be because of timelines, you may want to do a lease back. So then that way escrow can be closed and the 1031 exchange can be done, but the seller, who's now basically, you know, a renter in the property, they go ahead and they're staying on the property. There's a gray area in that is, what should the rent be? A lot of times, like I've been in situations, we offered with our offer a free lease back. So that meant they weren't paying any rent. Technically, then because if it's a contract and there's no consideration in the contract, then it's kind of like, yeah, but that was a free one. So how valid is that? So many times you'll see $1 lease back or something like that. So technically there was some consideration. There was money given for renting back the property, even though it was $1. We all know that that's going to be basically a free lease back, but that's what it is. Some lease backs will be, and this is what I encountered on a Highland Park home, is my buyers bought the home and then the sellers needed a lease back, but they were leasing back the property at what their mortgage payment would be. So they were being very fair about it. And they were like, hey, our mortgage payment is, I think it was like $7,800 a month. So that was what they paid my buyers, and basically they got it in credit in escrow, but that's what they paid to get their 29 days of lease back time, and they stayed in the home. But that gave them the opportunity to have all of those funds, buy another home outright and close that escrow in time, and they moved into that new home. Those are some of the reasons why you use a lease back. And lease back is as flexible as almost any other negotiating deal. Some people don't like leasebacks. Like some lenders, they don't want to see it. They don't want it in the contract. In those cases, a lot of times you may need to do an addendum. So it just depends on the lender. Do you have any questions on leasebacks? Because it's something really hot right now. So I thought I would bring that up so you know what these are.
You said even if it's a week that they are leasing it back, they have to get renter's insurance, or if it's over the 29 days.
There's no requirement for renter's insurance, but
Okay.
they should.
Okay.
There's no requirement, but they should. So if you're especially if you're the listing agent, that would be one of those things I would say to the buyers coming in, say, hey, yay, we're doing, the lease back and everything. And they can leave it at that. But the buyer's agent, because you're looking out for your clients, now that they own the property and people are living on it, the buyer's agent should make sure, like, hey, I also want to make sure your sellers have acquired renter's insurance. So that way, when we go into the lease back mode, that they're covered during that time.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Now, if it's just a short amount of days, you may want to contact, because a lot of insurance, they provide overlaps. They give you grace periods, but never assume. So always make the phone call, or have your client make the phone call. Really, it's on them. So, you could tell your seller, like, hey, I know you're gonna, stay in the house for 3 days after closing. Why don't you call your insurance and just make sure everything's covered? You can do something as simple as that. Or you can have a conversation with the buyer's agent and say, hey, just wanted to know, how are we doing the insurance? Are your buyers buying home insurance at the time that they purchase, that escrow closes? Is it covered right then? If that's the case, does it cover the 3 days that the seller's going to remain in the home? Let them know. But also remember, as an agent, you're not taking on these responsibilities. You're informing them, and that's one of those things that, that's on them. You're just facilitating everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other questions on leasebacks? Okay. I'm going to go then straight into what I've been asked about, and I think it's very important. I have a couple of charts. I'm going to show you the first one, and let me know if you see the home buying process chart.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, this is going to become available to all of you guys. Should be today, so you guys have all of this. So what this does is this shows you, if you look at basically the top, where it's in red, and it kind of goes around, and the first stage is meet with a realtor, and you go ahead and you go around. Then you get pre-approved. Then you search for homes. Now, obviously, if somebody has all cash, the pre-approved part, well, you kind of cross off. You're just showing, this is to illustrate to somebody, hey, this is the process of buying a home. You make an offer. You negotiate the offer. You go into escrow. You take care of the details, and then you close. Oversimplification, but that's kind of how it goes. Any questions on this one? Okay, let's go to.
Oh, wait, Rob, I have one. Is it the same thing if you're helping someone find a lease, if like the property that they end up leasing pays your commission, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay.
It's very similar. The get pre-approved, it's really not, because there's no loan involved, but you do want to make sure they have the funds. And I've been asked that question a number of times on leases. And you know, a lot of times we think it's a little bit, oh, I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding, but you can, and you don't even have to be the bad guy on it. You can literally just say, listen, when we get ready to make an offer, we're going to need proof of funds showing that you can afford to rent this place. Okay, no problem. And a lot of times, you know, not all the time, but sometimes you may get somebody saying, oh, well, I'll do it, you know, when we make the offer. Hey, no problem, I understand. However, would it be possible to get me at least some of those things to me early so I can look at them and make sure that it's something that the landlord would be agreeable to? And that way we're not scrambling last minute, which actually may hurt our chance of getting a place. So then that way you can get ahead of time, because just like buyers, a lot of people, if they're not used to looking for a property, they don't know how much things cost. And, you know, it's just like a buyer. A buyer can easily say, oh, well, you know what? We've got $11,000 in our savings account, so that should be fine. Fine for what? You know, do you know how much it's going to cost for your escrow, for your down payment, you know, for all of those things to get you into a home? And also, you don't want to do razor thin, because what if you need to hire a moving company, or what if repairs need to be made, or, you know, any of those things. So those are the conversations you kind of have ahead of time, so nobody's caught off guard.
Okay, thank you.
The other one is you're selling a home. So here, guess what? Still step one, you meet with a real estate agent, because you're doing the same thing. Then at that point, though, it changes. You know, you're establishing a price, you prepare the home. By the way, just like on the buyer's, you know, side, every one of these steps may look like it's the same size, but the reality is, you know, some steps may be quicker and other steps may take a lot longer, like preparing a home. Well, I've had some sellers that they live like in model homes. My home right now I'm in escrow with, literally the staging was, well, the entire prep for the home for me was, I bought 6 orchids and I put it in all the bathrooms and 1 in the kitchen. That was it, because she lives like it's a model house. I had a guy in West Hollywood that his staging and his prep for the home was decluttering and decluttering. So that took about a week. And I replaced, and I've sold this home 3 times now. So I replaced 2 pieces of artwork with 2 just generic pieces of artwork, and we were done. We were ready to go. Those are the easy ones. Other times you have people that, oh, they need to paint. They have original hardwood floors, but they haven't been refinished in like 30 years. Oh, you know, that's going to be a good return on investment. So let's get the floors redone. I mean, those sort of things take longer to do. So it may take longer to prepare the home. You list the home for sale. You get offers and negotiate. Then you're under contract. Then you have the final stuff getting worked through, and then you go into closing. And this all kind of explains it. The nice thing about these charts is that if you're meeting with somebody, it's really simple just to sit down and meet with them and just kind of walk through these things. These are also great if you needed to do like a one-off and, hey, let's get coffee. Okay. And you just have this printed out, and you can just, like, somebody's going, well, what is it going to take for me to buy a home? What is it going to take for me to sell my house? Well, let's just go through this. And this makes it really simple just for you to walk through. And it's kind of like a page turner in a sense, where step by step, it's right in front of you. So you don't think you have to have this memorized, because you don't, it's right there. By the way, if you want to take screenshots of things like these, once you get them and put them on social media, that's what it's there for. If you even want to do like a quick little 1-minute explanation, I would say that would be great too. Remember, any video you share, if it's 75% of people will watch 75% of the video if it's 1 minute or less. Once you start hitting above a minute, you start dropping off very quickly. And then the complicated big boy one. Are you guys seeing where it says listing to close home buying process?
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts off with all the blue bubbles at the top.
Yeah.
Okay, This is the big boy that it kind of encounters both of them. And again, you could use the same thing if you're talking to somebody. So this is literally like, okay, it doesn't matter what side you're on, but the buyer is going to jump into it midway. The seller obviously is going to be from the very beginning to the very end. So first, you talk with the realtor. Guess what? That's you people. So you talk with the realtor. You go over, hey, here's what your needs are. Here's what your goals are. What do you guys want to do? And you ask questions. You know, remember, whenever you're doing a lot of the real estate stuff, it's always about their needs, about their wants, about their goals. It's not about how great you are. It's not about how much you know. It's about them. So ask questions. You know, what are some of your needs? Where would you like to go? What timeline are we looking at? What are, you know, what are some must-haves? What do you, if you're talking with the seller, how much do you think your home would sell for? And if they come back and go, well, you're the expert, you should know. No, I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit, because a lot of times people have a predetermined amount in their mind. That's all. You know, I mean, you can have that. I've had some people literally say to me kind of like that, well, you're the expert, you should know, don't you know? And obviously it was a little bit combative person. And I said that same thing. No, I just wanted to check with you. I actually want to do some research, but also want to know if you have something in your mind so I can address that. And I know how to have a constructive conversation with you on it. That's all you need to say. And part of that is then you look at, you know, some of the questions. What are some of the time constraints? Are they, you know, do they need to get somewhere by a certain time? Is there something we need to look at? Again, I mentioned that we have a home that's closing, and we talked about the idea of getting my seller into the home by the holidays. And Thanksgiving was, you know, like, oh, that would be great. It's obviously not going to happen for Thanksgiving, but probably we'll get them into the home by early enough where literally most of their Christmas stuff can be up, and they'd be happy with that. Where are they relocating to? Where are they going to be going? What are their financial goals? You know, do they have something in mind that they're trying to accomplish? Again, for this particular person, you know, it's a 5-bedroom, 5.5 bathroom home because she raised her family in the home. Well, now it's just her. So she's downsizing. She doesn't need that home. But part of that is that the proceeds from some of this home too is going to be her retirement. So those are some of her financial goals. She wants that financial security. Other people, they may be thinking about growing, you know, maybe they want to think about upsizing. What if they're in a smaller home? They want to get into a bigger home. What if they want an investment property? That's all part of their financial goals. And there could be other goals as well too. What if it's a multifamily situation? Oh, mom is going to move in with us, or we're going to actually go in with our brothers, or we're going to buy a duplex and my sister and her husband are buying the other side and I'm buying this side. All of those things can be part of the goals in there. Then you qualify the actual property. So you're looking at the market, you're looking at what the conditions are, and then what the price, compared to the comparables, what the price would be, and then maybe what the conditions, how it's going to tweak it one way or another. So like in my neighborhood, we're all, or I should say largely mid-century modern. My neighborhood originally years ago was avocado groves. So we have the 2 original ranch homes on the corner that were built in 1890s. And then there's another home down the way that was built like in the 30s. That was one of the kids' homes. And then eventually they developed all the properties and it was developed in the 50s. So that's my mid-century modern home. Okay, great. So I would look at all the comparables in my area. Now, guess what? Those 2 18th century homes, probably not comparables to mine, because they're completely different than what our homes are. And so that's not something you're going to compare. But to the other homes in the area, well, okay, what upgrades have been done? Well, we have central AC. Okay, that's an upgrade. So you would put that in there. We are now 2 bathrooms, not 1 bathroom. That's another upgrade we've done. We've added on to the home. You know, that's another thing. We've done this to home. We've done this to the home. Okay, so that's another upgrade. We've kept actually our kitchen original, which we like, and we just want to replace the countertops. But I'm a realtor. I can tell you that the idea that we have the original cabinets, most people would like, some people wouldn't, but especially having the original tile countertops, that doesn't help. So that would be something that would ding us a little bit too. But we've upgraded both bathrooms. Okay, so that brings it back up. So those are all the different things that you take into account when you're looking at the pricing of a home and what the current market is. Part of that, you can see how it breaks down. Part of that is the competing homes for sale. Now, if you look, the next one is competing properties recently sold. What's the difference? Okay, ones that have sold, they're like proven. Hey, this is what this property sold for. What are all the different things about this property, and does it compare to our property? And by the way, when you're looking at properties, kind of the rule of thumb is you want it within 200 square feet. So my home is 1,500 square feet. So if there's a home in the area that's 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and it's 1,400 square feet, it's a comparable. If it's 1,350, still a comparable. You may scale down the price a little, but it's still a comparable. And you go the other way, the same thing. But what if there's another home in the area and it's 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and it's 900 square feet? Not really a comparable, because we've got 2 bathrooms and it's a lot smaller than our house. But those are the ones that are sold. The ones for sale, that's when you have to use judgment. So let's say you're looking in a neighborhood and all the ones that have sold, you look at all of those comps, you put all of that together, and the average home is like $950,000. Okay, great. But then somebody in that neighborhood has a home that fits all of that criteria and they're asking 1.1 million. Well, unless it has, gold-plated chandeliers, maybe it's not really a comparable, and it's still for sale. And how long has it been on the market? And blah, blah, blah. So that's one for the ones for sale. You do take into consideration, but only if it's really being a comparable. I have had some appraisals that took place, that they looked at the homes that were sold and then a few that were in the area that were comparables, that were reasonably priced according to the market. And so then those were brought into the appraisal as comparables. But sometimes if it's scaled that much higher, it's not considered a comparable. And so they don't take it into consideration. Your absorption rate, and by the way, this is a standard thing. I know we're in a seller's market, but when you look at absorption rate, how easily is it absorbed? Meaning, how many offers have they gotten? How long has it been on the market? And so that's when I kind of mentioned it right now. If it's been sitting on the market for a long time, there's something about that property. It can be price. It could be, maybe it is priced correctly. And then you look at the place and you're like, oh, it's priced correctly according to all of the data. But you look at the property and you're like, oh, no, this is not good. Maybe like you're literally right next to the town dump, and you have that lovely scent coming over and you realize, oh, that's why the property's so low. You may look at something and it may be sitting on the market a while because all the other properties are great and this home is lovely, but it's sitting right on the boulevard, and so it's getting all that noise and all that traffic. Oh, that can affect something. So I did have a home one time that one of the first open houses I sat on when I first got into the market, and it literally was by the 605 freeway where that huge sound wall is, and it's on the other side. So yes, technically there's a sound wall there, but you're right next to the freeway, and that caused it to stay on the market a little bit longer. So all that combined gives you what the odds of selling are going to be. Then you're going to look at the property inspection. That's when you look at things and you're kind of, okay, so what have we, what do we see here? I mentioned, what if the floors need to be redone? What if there's painting that needs to be redone? Oh, there's there's the porch light, the glass is broken. All of those different things. That's when you kind of go through and like, okay, here's all things that we can improve that will give you a good return on investment. And some of that stuff, when it comes to kitchens and bathrooms, your return on investment is about the same as what's put into it. So a lot of times we tell people, hey, don't do a complete remodel just because you're really not going to get that return on investment for all the money that you put into it and all the time and all the hassle. However, if it's the kind of thing where the bathroom pretty much is okay, but a good coat of paint, replacing the medicine cabinet and putting on new knobs will really refresh it and look clean and neat, then that's what you do, because that would be worth it. Which goes in the next one, make the necessary improvements. Then you stage the home. And this is one that everybody we get into with listings. Okay, are they still living in the home? Are they not living in the home? If they're not living in the home, that's the easiest way to do it and the easiest way to show. So yay. And then you talk about staging. Staging is going to cost money. And some sellers will, when you talk to them and you help them understand, look, when you stage a home, you're going to get anywhere from 5 to 10% return on investment of the listing and sale price than you would if it wasn't staged. Financially, then it makes sense. But some people then they'll still scale back, and like my home is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and they may say, okay, well then, but I only want you to stage one of the bedrooms, and I only want you to stage a little bit in the family room. Okay, and I've had some sellers do that. Okay, then you got to figure things out. And one of my sellers that did that for 2 homes, because he remodeled 2 homes and flipped them, I literally went and I bought air mattresses. I bought table lamps, and I mean, I did everything on a budget. And the 2 bedrooms that weren't staged, I ended up having, there were high air mattresses that went 22 inches up. So because it went 22 inches up, you throw on a bedspread on top of it, put some pillows, voila, you have a bed that looks staged. Then I put on a lamp, I put on an end table, voila, it looked fine, And so that was the staging of it, and it looked okay. Guess what? We 2 months later sold the other home that he just flipped, and I literally moved all of that bedroom stuff into the other home because, again, he only paid for the master bedroom to be staged, not the other rooms to be staged. Then declutter and depersonalize. Those are 2 separate things. Depersonalizing is more along the lines of, are there personal, pictures of family up? Are there other things that trophies, anything that's like, oh, this is personal? That's the kind of stuff that you can go ahead and take down. I did have a listing one time that, and it was my person that I mentioned to you that he lives like it's a model home, and he had a lot of family pictures in the home. And I said, okay, only leave up these family pictures. And I told him, like, there were 3 of them and they were in his bedroom. I said, nobody's really going to go into the bedroom and strike you on that, because he really wanted some of the family pictures up. And I said, okay, if you need to, we'll leave these up. We'll take them down for the photo shoot, but we'll put them back up, and nobody's really going to think anything of it. But the rest of the house, you need to declutter and take those things down. And so that's what we did. Now, the decluttering part is, you always hear when it comes to people taking photos that it always adds 10 pounds. And the reason why is because all those details show up in a photo. Same thing when it comes to taking photos in a home. So I've had, in fact, that same person, when I sold his first condo, we did the photo shoot, and he left the loofah in his shower stall, which was clear glass. So as soon as you look at the bathroom photo, I saw the loofah. And that was what my eye was drawn to. So fortunately, I was able to retouch it in Photoshop and we were okay. But that's the kind of stuff that a lot of times you declutter and you declutter. Now, you're going to say, well, obviously he was still living in the place. Yes. So a lot of times when you do the photo shoot, you declutter a room, you move everything out, and you may then have to move some of it back in just because they can still live in the place. But for the photo shoot itself, you want to get rid of all that and you want to keep it as decluttered as possible. Our human brains, when we go into a home and we're live, just like if you're looking at a person live, you don't notice many of the imperfections. You don't pick up on all these little details. It kind of fades in because you're focused on something. However, when you're looking at a photo and it's that 2-dimensional thing, everything pops out at you and you pick up everything the same. So again, you may go into somebody's bathroom and their loofah may be in there while you're viewing the home and you're like, okay, no big deal. But in the photo, you're like, oh my God, there's a loofah there. So that's the kind of stuff like you declutter, you declutter, you declutter. Then you cosmetically enhance. So that's where I talked about some of the minor repairs. That may be like, hey, in my kitchen, I have all the original cabinetry, but I've replaced all of the hardware. So all of the hardware is fresh and new. There may be other things like that. You may have like an old doorbell. Okay, replace the doorbell, make it something prettier. All of those things are the small little things that catch people's eye. Then you can determine the asking price. Now, obviously, you're not determining the asking price before because you don't know what things they're talking about doing. And by the way, all of this may take place in the same conversation. So it's just, these are all the factors that are going in there. Once you determine the asking price, then you list the property for sale and you put it on the market. When you do that, that's when you want to attract qualified buyers. And you notice, by the way, it says qualified buyers, because if you just attract buyers, well, that's going to be a waste of time because some of them may not be qualified. So how do you attract them? Biggest one is the MLS, obviously, because that's going to go across the internet and so on to all of the third-party places as well. Now we have, and I have everything in here because this is generic and it fits all markets. Print advertising. Okay, for me, that means I have the brochures. I have, it depends on the, on that gentleman I told you about, the first condo I sold for him. It was a beautiful luxury condo, and I actually did an 11 by 17 brochure folded in half. So it was 4 pages, and it was on gloss paper, and it was gorgeous. I actually wanted to do more, but he said, no, I don't want that much on my condo, even though I'm the one springing the bill for it. The one that I have, the 5.5 bedroom, the 5 bedroom, 5.5 bath home, I did a thick cardstock brochure, and it is 8 pages stapled, folded in half. And so, because that's what that, kind of would go with that home. I've had other homes where I've done a really nice, just 2-page flyer, but not from the MLS. Those are not pretty, but something that looks really good. So that's part of my print advertising. And then I have those brochures ready if I need to hand them out. If for whatever reason, I have the print available. Internet advertising, above and beyond the MLS. So internet advertising can be, you take out a Facebook ad. It could be you take out a Google ad. It could be, there's a number of companies out there. One is called zipflyer.com, where they will help you put together a brochure, or you can just send them the PDF of your brochure and you can mail it out to realtors in a certain region, in certain regions, or even all of Southern California. You can also do a virtual tour. So, and by the way, some of this stuff, it crosses over to your social media, and you can easily see how that would work. The virtual tour can be crossed over to social media, and the virtual tour can be like, think of it, the Matterport 3D tour, where people literally can like walk through their home virtually using the Matterport. That can be considered a virtual tour. Another virtual tour could be the video, where you just go ahead and you have the video and you post that and you make that available. Then you can have open houses, and open houses, by the way, can have like your print advertising there, obviously, and so on. Sometimes you can do there's some services that are free that can do the quick, the QR code for the quick scans. So people can scan it, and you can have maybe that link to your ads, or it can link to the website. For me, one of my standards by default is everybody gets a website that is for their home. So the home that currently is in escrow right now, it is Victor Court. So their website domain is 14862 victorct.com. And anybody who goes to that website can get all of the website set up, all the photos, the 3D tour, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you have a QR code, let's say at an open house, and people can scan it and it automatically redirects, then bingo, that can be one of those things. Direct mailing. What if you know people out there who would be interested in a home like this? So you may mail that information to them. You could do some of the third-party stuff where they just do, they use the mailing list and you pay them to do all this. If you want to do that, that's fine. I know some people out there that do that. Just look at your return on investment and see what's going to happen. And then, of course, property showings. That's when, hey, can we see the house? And there's times that people, it'll be individual. Sometimes you can gang those up. So I've had sometimes buyers contact me and say, well, we want to see the house this Saturday at noon. And I'm like, okay, and I clear it with my seller. And then I've had somebody else contact me. I'll let them know, well, we're already doing a showing at noon. Would you like to come at that time? Would you like to come at 12:15? You know, all the individual showings that maybe you don't have open houses for the home. Like this particular home I just mentioned, she didn't want any open houses because she didn't want all the looky-loos, which she would have gotten in the neighborhood. And so that's understandable. So then we curtail to that. Other times you may have open houses, but the people can't come to that open house. They need a separate showing. Those are all the different things. So then you go into the purple section. That's where you get different offers to purchase. And so that's when the buyers are saying, okay, this is how much we're willing to buy the home for, and here's all the terms. And I will say, you know, in the RPA, the residential purchase agreement, that is the more complicated of the two agreements in this transaction. You have the residential listing agreement, you have the residential purchase agreement. So on the buyer side, you are looking at a little bit more of the complicated reason or the complicated contract. And the reason being is you're setting up, hey, here is our offer, and everything that's in this contract is how the entire transaction is going to proceed. So understand that if we have 10 days contingency, that's part of it. Understand that if we have so much money down, that's going to be part of the contract. So everything that's in that RPA, that all gets put in there. Now, I have been asked at times, there's some parts of the RPA like, well, what if you don't know who the warranty company is going to be? That's fine. You could put buyer's choice. Usually when you're making an offer, everything is negotiable, but especially in a seller's market and even in a normal market, usually the seller chooses the escrow company and the title company. Now, the times that I've even, you know, there's exceptions and everything's negotiable. I've had some investment buyers tell me, we will pay for even the title fees and the escrow fees, but then you have to use our preferred companies. That's where all of that is in the contract, in the offer to purchase, in the RPA, and that's when you get that information. But then, as you can see, the next line, that's when, if you need to, you can make counter offers. What if they've stated, hey, we want to use our escrow company, and that's what's in there. Your counter offer could be like, no, sorry, we still want to use our escrow company for whatever reason. You can have in there, what if they put in an offer for $950,000, and by the way, you got two other offers at $980,000. Well, you may want to counter that offer and say, hey, you need to give us your final and best, offer above, blah, 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 blah. By the way, in the counter offers, there's what's called a seller counter offer, SCO, and they're numbered, so SCO1, SCO2, but a seller counter offer, that offer, if it is completely accepted by the buyer, that's a valid contract. So you make a seller counter offer to somebody if you are only really countering one offer. A seller multiple counter offer, SMCO, that's when, as a listing agent, you're letting everybody know we're sending out seller multiple counter offers. And even if you agree to all this, we may still say no to you. It's not a valid contract just because you sign it. We have to then go beyond this and go above. So understand that difference. By the way, buyer can come back and they can have a BCO, buyer counter offer. So off of the SCO or off of the SMCO, the buyer can go ahead and say, nope, we're going to agree to this. Yes, we're going to agree to this. We're going to do this. All of those things. That's all part of the negotiations. Then you get to the part where everybody agrees to all the terms. And then that's when the offer is accepted. Now, that'll get turned into escrow. But the original RPA by itself, residential purchase agreement, is not the full contract if there's been counter offers involved. The full contract is when all of those counter offers finish. So let's say, I'm going to bring it up in here. Ashley has a listing, okay? And Eric has made an offer on that listing, okay? And we're not going to even talk about multiple counter offers because it pretty much follows the same thing. We're just going to talk about them too. Well, Eric is saying, yeah, we're going to offer $920,000 for this home. The home is currently listed at $940,000 by Ashley. And there's some other things in there that are different too. So then Ashley makes a seller counteroffer, an SCO1. You're going to see on all these forms, there's always a place to put numbers, so it's easier to keep track of it. And then it'll have, no, we are saying we want you to make at least $935,000. And by the way, we want, let's say, 20-day escrow, and we want a 10-day inspection contingency. Okay. Eric may say, we're not going to do that. So we're going to make a buyer counteroffer, and we're going to say, nope, we're going to come in at $935,000. So we're upping our first one, but we're still going to come in at $935,000, and we can do a couple days short of that escrow, not the full amount, and we can do a 12-day inspection period. Okay. And at that point, if everybody agrees to that, then, and you can see on the contracts, there's places to sign all this, all three of those documents are turned into escrow because that's considered the fully executed contract. It's the original purchase contract, but because there was a counteroffer and counteroffer, then all of those things need to be signed because that's actually all of the details combined. That makes the fully executed contract. And I've only gone multiple levels on that, where, I mean, we had seller counteroffer, buyer counteroffer, seller counteroffer, buyer counteroffer, and that was the only level we went to. And then finally we agreed. But all of those had to get turned into escrow because that's a fully executed contract. All of those details make up what's going to happen. Because what escrow does is they look at all of that information, the original RPA, and then everything that's been worked out in those counteroffers, and then they write up instructions on what's going to happen in escrow. And then they send that to you as an agent to say, hey, this is what we're saying is going to happen. Do you agree? And you review it, you say yes, you know, whatever. And then once you approve it, then that goes out to both the buyer and the seller for them to sign. So that way escrow then proceeds. So in the RPA, the residential purchase agreement, most of the time you have contingencies. And in those contingencies, it could be any of those different things that need to take place. It can be inspection contingencies, which currently the default is 17 days. It can be the appraisal contingency. Currently the default is 17 days. And it can be the loan contingency, which the default is 21 days. All of those things are negotiable. You're going to notice that the default in the contract are those things. That's why I love printing the contracts in color or looking at everything in color, because if you modify it, it goes from the pre-printed black type to the blue type. So it's easy just to visually see, oh, guess what? They changed the inspection contingency to 14 days, you know, something like that. So those contingencies are what then go into effect. Now, why do you have contingencies? Think of it as a balance of power. So when the seller is selling their home, I'm selling my home. They have all the power in the world. They can say, okay, I am going to be asking this much for the home. Who is going to make me offers? Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. They have all of the power because they can review all the offers and say yes or no. Buyer comes in with an offer and the buyer's offer gets accepted. They now have the power. Well, why do they have the power? Well, because the seller has said, here's my home, and now it's up to you to determine everything about that home. It's determined to you to figure out what's going on with the home. It's determined to you, can you follow through with some of the things that you said you were going to do? So that's why you have contingencies, because that allows those things to take place. Now, you have what's called an EMD, earnest money deposit, that goes down, that's part of the RPA, and that goes down into escrow, and usually default is within the first 3 days, that money goes into escrow. That's the EMD. The buyer can get back their EMD if they still have contingencies in place and cancel the contract, because they have that contingency saying, oh, we want to cancel. So think of the name contingency. We've made an offer, we're in escrow, but it's contingent on blah, blah, blah. So if that contingent thing doesn't work out, we're going to cancel. And then they get their earnest money deposit back. The first one is inspections, and inspections is the easiest one to cancel, because it could be anything. It could be the buyer walked through the home and like, oh, I didn't notice that there's cracks on the wall, or I didn't realize that we were right next to a high school, and I didn't know that, at 3 o'clock every day, there's a ton of traffic. Any of those things can be the inspections. It can obviously be the things too that come up in the inspection reports. Something's there and, oh, we just don't like it at all. That's way too much for it to take on. Or some of that can be the negotiations where, okay, we're doing a request for repairs and we discovered there's $25,000 in foundation issues that need to be repaired. So we're asking for those repairs to be done. And then it could be like the seller can say, nope, we're not going to do any repairs. Okay, then we're canceling, because it's not worth it to us, knowing everything we have now discovered since then, to purchase this home for whatever reason. And it's not always financial. Some people don't want the hassle. There's a lot of people that want to go into a turnkey home and they want it to be turnkey. A lot of people, they don't like, they have a mindset of they don't like going into a home that had to be fixed. They wanted to walk into a home and everything's working from the start. So all of those things could be, the reasons to cancel. By the way, part of this inspection contingency is that's when the buyer submits a request for repairs. Notice it's not a demand, it's a request for repairs, because the seller can say no. The seller can say, nope, I'll do some of those. The seller can say, we agree to all of those, or the seller can just keep their mouth shut and not say anything. It's a request. So that's a thing for you as an agent to make sure you're in conversation with the other agent to find out, hey, we've submitted a request for repairs. Where are we at on that? Because your contingency is still ticking away and it's still coming up. And if they respond to it or not, that could depend. Now, that's when you have to work that out. What if they're saying, oh, they haven't gotten back to us, and your inspection contingency is coming up? And you could have that conversation with the agent saying, we're not removing the inspection contingency until we know what's going on with our request for repairs. Or I've been in a situation where the buyers, I was on the listing side, and I'll be honest, my seller was being very difficult. And they said, we're not doing any repairs, and we got a request for repairs. And I let the other agent know, hey, they're not going to do any of the repairs. And it ended up, they still removed their inspection contingency, because they were like, no, even regardless of everything we know about the house, we still want to purchase it. So that's what takes place in all of the inspection contingency. Bit of advice: if you are on the buying side and you just submit, oh, we want $4,000 credit, a lot of listing agents will be like, you didn't tell us what for, so no. Or we want everything repaired in the inspection report. Okay, that was just lazy and everything, because if you looked at inspection reports, sometimes it'll say, oh, keep monitoring this. Who's going to keep monitoring this stuff? And by the way, you didn't give us a price tag. So because you gave us, let's say you said, oh, garage door needs to be fixed, the springs need to be replaced. Let's say the garbage disposal needs to be replaced. Let's say the one toilet needs to be replaced. Okay. As a buying agent, you will get a lot more ahead of time if you get estimates on those things. And then when you submit your request for repairs, you not only itemize everything and even cite it. If there's an inspection report, cite it where it is in the inspection report, but then also have the price tag attached to it as well. So then that way it's easier for the listing agent to go through and go over with the seller and say, hey, here's the things that are happening. I've literally had somebody submit a request for repairs on the buyer side, and it said, we want $10,000 credit. And that's all it said in there. So I literally emailed back to them and said, no. And then I got a phone call 5 minutes later. Well, why are you saying no? And exactly what I told you guys. We didn't get a breakdown of what the repairs are. We didn't get any estimates of what it is. We don't know what the credit is for. So no. All of a sudden, I got back estimates. I got back things itemized and that sort of thing. Makes it much easier. And you always want to make your transactions easier and working with the other agent. Don't make it an us versus them sort of thing. So anyways, that's the inspection contingency. Then you're going to go on to financing. And the financing part can also be, the appraisal, and does the appraisal come in at what you wanted it to come in at? By the way, if a home appraises for, let's say you're offering $950,000 on the home and the appraisal comes in at $900,000, that means the lender will lend you $900,000, but then that $50,000 difference is going to have to get figured out. That's a conversation to have with your buyers and your sellers ahead of time, if that were to happen, and what you do from there. Many times, nope, we'll just have to make up the difference, but that also gives you a reason to cancel. And then the last thing usually is if there's a loan and you're not able to get the loan. Now, the inspection contingency is the easiest one to cancel, and usually canceling for appraisal or even the loan, there are ways to do that. But sometimes, like let's say there was a commitment there and all of a sudden your buyers are wanting to back out, and the seller, the listing agent, wants to push it and say, well, tell me why you're canceling because of the loan. Did your lender not come through? Let me talk to them. Let me do that. And you want to make it as legit as possible. You don't want to just use a cancellation for any other means. Once all that's done, the documentation is all signed, then and then and signed by the seller on this, because obviously the buyer has presented all of this documentation. Then the documentation for buying the home is signed, because the buyer has to sign the loan documents if there's loan documents involved, and then everybody also has to sign final escrow papers. By the way, there's a difference between what's called wet signature and non-wet digital. Digital is like when we use DocuSign and you can send it, but some things require a wet signature, meaning they have to have a pen, because see, it's ink, it's wet, and they have to hand sign it. It can't be done electronically. Then the mortgage deed is, or the mortgage and the deed are recorded. So that means that it's actually, the title is recorded. Once that happens, ownership now goes from the buyer, or goes from the seller to the buyer once it's recorded. So not on, if you have close of escrow is, let's say, on the 15th, and you're like, oh, okay, at 9 a.m. my buyers can move in. Oh, no, not so fast, because until that title is recorded, that home is still owned by the seller. Once it's recorded, now it's owned by the buyer. Well, what difference does that make? One is liability. I had a buyer wanting to move in a day before recording and say, oh, can we go ahead and do these things and these things? Nope, because my sellers are still liable for anything that happens while you're on that property in the home. So nope, once it's recorded, please feel free to do whatever you want, because now your buyers own the home. After it's recorded, the seller gets paid. That usually happens within a certain time frame, and that can vary just depending. If it's done, let's say it's recorded early in the day, the seller may get their funds transferred that same day. A lot of times the cutoff can be like 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. So the seller isn't paid to the next day. So you can have that conversation ahead of time. Oh, so we're closing on the 15th. So that means I'll get paid on the 15th. Well, you may get paid on the 16th or even the 17th. It depends on what day things close. And by the way, we're talking business days if business is open. So not Saturday and Sunday. And if it's an actual holiday that, let's say, the escrow companies and everybody has off, then it won't be recording until the next business day. And then at the end, everything is sold. So that was a really brief explanation from beginning to end of the entire process. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, but feel free to shoot out a few.
I'm just curious, and maybe this is a whole nother day, but when you're doing like the market comparison, and you're like, this person, it's a comparable property, but like your seller has like, a pool or something. How do you know how much to add or subtract on the listing price?
Really good question. That's where I sometimes ask other agents, like when I first got in the business, I was looking at something just like that, Chelsea. And I said, well, wait, this home has 1.5 bathrooms, and this home here is 2 bathrooms. And so my really good friend had been doing the business for years. He said, okay, in that neighborhood, probably I would say you're going to add about another 5,000, if it's a half bath. If there's no bath and you need to figure out the difference, that could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 depending. So, and that was years ago. So now I would pad it, a little bit more because of the cost of everything, but that's how you kind of, mitigate some of that. When it comes to a pool, a lot of times you look at the cost of something and then you kind of, ask somebody who's done the market for a while, okay, I understand right now it may cost whatever, like $100,000 to put in a pool. Do I add $100,000 on? No, but you'd add on still a significant amount because that's still a bonus having a pool. By the way, there was a number of years ago that having a pool was actually a minus. So if all homes were exactly the same, but one had a pool, you may be looking at 600,000. Oh, they have a pool. Oh, we're going to lower it to $575,000 because right now people don't want pools. Now we're in a market, people do want pools.
Got it. And so would you bring in like an appraiser? No, that's really only for like the bank loan part, right?
That's a bank loan. You can always bring in, even if it's a cash offer, you can always bring in an appraiser, but the appraiser's got to get paid. So if it's a loan, the lender pays for the first appraisal. By the way, if there's a second appraisal, then it depends on who's responsible for messing up and having to have a second appraisal, depending on the kind of loan. But you can always pay for an appraiser, but then that's usually on the buyer to pay for the appraiser if they're paying all cash. However, if somebody who is selling the property, they're like, no, I really want to know. Okay, then we can go ahead and we can pay for an appraiser to appraise, your property if you would like, and you could do that. Most of the time, it never goes that far.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, I know that was a lot of information. Like I said, these documents, as you can see, they're PDFs. So I'm going to be sending them out to everybody, and you can see they're branded to KW Largemont. So it's easy for you just to print these out. If you want to talk to somebody about the whole process, if you want to use this on social media, please feel free. But it's also really good, like when you're having, hey, let's get together for coffee. Let's get together for something. Don't put that pressure on yourself where I have to have everything memorized. It also helps other people. We are the average human. I'm going to say average. The average human, 70% of what we learn and understand is going to be visual. So if you have something like this pre-printed in front of you, and that's the reason why it's different colors, because it's easier to follow, it helps you just to follow through and helps them to follow through too. Plus you can make notes. As you're going through some of these things, you could be talking to somebody thinking about selling their home and like, well, what are some of your goals? Oh, and you could like literally make notes. By the way, people appreciate that. I appreciate that. When people are taking notes, I know that, hey, what you're telling me is important to me. So I'm going to make sure I make note of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So anything else? Okay. I went a little bit over 2 minutes, but thank you for being patient. And I will see you guys next week. I'll be doing